Rebecca Chun sat frozen in her Mercedes 2 blocks from her Buckhead mansion, her 8-year-old son Michael pressed against her side, both watching their entire world burn. The clock on the dashboard read 2:47 a.m., and flames were already consuming the second floor of their $5 million home. Michael's toy camera hung around his neck, its red recording light still blinking in the darkness. Marcus, her husband, had woken her just 90 minutes earlier, insisting they needed to leave immediately for an early flight. He'd said the Uber was waiting. He'd kissed her forehead. He'd promised everything would be fine. If stories of justice and karma move you, subscribe to the TYCOON'S Ledger and join our community seeking truth. Rebecca's hands shook on the steering wheel as sirens wailed in the distance. Something had felt wrong the moment they'd pulled away from the house. Marcus had been too insistent, too urgent about a flight that didn't board until 6 a.m. So instead of heading to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, she'd circled back, parking where she could see their home. And now she understood why her gut had screamed danger. Marcus had been different these past 3 months. Whispered phone calls he'd taken his office with the door locked. Sudden business trips that didn't quite add up. That new life insurance policy he'd pushed her to sign, $2 million with him as the sole beneficiary, not even a trust for Michael. She questioned it once, and Marcus had smiled that charming smile that had won her over a decade ago, explaining that it was just smart financial planning, especially with Michael's autism diagnosis and the expensive therapies they'd need for years to come. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. His face filled her screen, that same charming smile frozen in his contact photo. She watched it ring once, twice, 3 times, then declined. Immediately, a text appeared. Babe, where are you? I'm at the airport. Flight boards in 30 minutes. The lies came so easily to him. She could picture him there, at the departure's terminal, creating his perfect alibi while firefighters battled to save a house he'd meant to become their tomb. Michael rocked slightly beside her, a self-soothing behavior he developed as a toddler. He was humming softly, processing the chaos in his own way. Then he spoke, his voice clear and matter-of-fact in that way that always surprised people who expected autism to mean silence. Mama, Mr. Phillips was at our house tonight. Rebecca's blood turned to ice. Leonard Phillips was Marcus's business partner, a man who'd visited their home maybe twice in the 8 years she'd known him. When was Mr. Phillips there? Michael pointed to his toy camera, that cheap blue plastic device he carried everywhere, the one that had replaced his stuffed elephant as his comfort object 6 months ago. Before we left, when you were in the shower, he was in the garage with Daddy. They were talking loud. My camera heard everything. The red light continued to blink. Recording. Always recording. Michael's autism made him hyper-focused on patterns, sounds, details that neurotypical people missed. He documented his world compulsively, capturing hours of footage and audio on that little camera, playing the recordings back to himself over and over as a way to process his experiences. She thought it was just another quirk, another coping mechanism. But now, as emergency vehicles screamed toward their burning mansion and her phone buzzed again with another call from her murderous husband, Rebecca realized that Michael's obsessive recording might have just captured the evidence that would save their lives. Her father's voice echoed in her memory from 5 years ago, 3 weeks before his car went off a mountain road with mysteriously failed brakes. Rebecca, I don't trust that man. There's something wrong about the way Marcus does business. She defended her husband then, grieved her father, inherited the construction company that Marcus had immediately merged with his real estate empire. She'd been too shattered to see the pattern. But now, watching flames devour the house where she and Michael should have been sleeping, Rebecca finally understood. Her father hadn't died in an accident. And tonight, she and her son had narrowly escaped becoming Marcus's second and third victims. The sun was just beginning to rise when Rebecca pulled into the parking lot of a modest brick building in Sweet Auburn, Atlanta's historic African-American neighborhood. The address belonged to Claudia Washington, the attorney who'd handled her father's estate 5 years ago. Rebecca remembered how Claudia had looked at Marcus during the will reading, a skepticism in her dark eyes that had made Rebecca defensive at the time. Now that skepticism seemed like wisdom. The lights were on in Claudia's second-floor office despite the early hour. As if she'd been expecting them, Rebecca gathered Michael, who'd finally fallen asleep against her shoulder, and climbed the worn wooden stairs. Before she could knock, the door opened. "I wondered when you'd come," Claudia said simply, stepping aside to let them enter. She was in her late 50s, silver threading through her natural hair, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Her office was cramped but organized, walls lined with law books and civil rights memorabilia. Files covered her desk, and Rebecca's heart lurched when she recognized her father's name on several folders. "I've been investigating Marcus Chin since the day your father died. Come inside. We have a lot to discuss." Rebecca settled Michael on a worn leather couch, where he immediately curled up with his camera clutched to his chest. Claudia poured coffee into chipped mugs without asking, the kind of automatic hospitality that came from years of comforting traumatized clients. "Your house," she asked quietly. "Burned. We barely escaped." Rebecca's voice cracked. "Marcus sent us away. Told me we needed to leave early for the airport. Michael told me his business partner Phillips was at the house tonight. Then," she gestured toward the windows, where smoke was probably still visible on the horizon. Claudia's jaw tightened. She pulled out a thick file, spreading photographs and documents across her desk. "Your father came to me 3 weeks before he died. He suspected Marcus was committing insurance fraud through the construction company, burning buildings he'd purchased for more than their value, collecting the insurance payouts. Your father had found evidence, Marcus's connection to at least 6 suspicious fires. He was planning to go to the authorities." Rebecca stared at the photographs. Buildings reduced to ash. Insurance claim forms. Patterns that her grieving mind had never connected. "You think Marcus killed him?" "I think your father was murdered to silence him and to give Marcus access to the construction company," Claudia said flatly. "But I couldn't prove it. Kenneth's car accident was ruled mechanical failure. No witnesses. Marcus had an alibi. He was at a construction site meeting when it happened. No evidence linking him to the brake line tampering. Just the suspicious timing and my gut instinct that something was very, very wrong." Michael stirred on the couch, his eyes opening. He sat up slowly, that careful, measured way he moved when processing something important. "Miss Claudia needs to hear the camera," he said with perfect clarity. "Daddy and Mr. Phillips talked about the fire, and about Grandpa. The camera knows everything." Claudia's eyes widened. She looked at Rebecca, who nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Michael records everything on that toy. It's how he processes the world. I don't know what's on there, but if Phillips was at our house tonight—" "May I see the camera, Michael?" Claudia asked gently, crouching to his eye level, respecting his space the way good people instinctively did with autistic children. Michael considered this for a long moment. Change was difficult. Routines mattered. But then he carefully lifted the camera strap over his head and held it out to her. Claudia connected the device to her laptop with practiced efficiency, as if she'd done this before. "I represented a mother last year whose autistic son witnessed a crime. These cameras are more sophisticated than people realize. 8 gigabytes of storage, timestamps on every file, surprisingly good audio quality." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up a directory of hundreds of recordings. She scrolled through dates and times, searching. Then she stopped. "Here. Tonight, 11:43 p.m. 18-minute recording." She clicked play, and Leonard Phillips's voice filled the small office. Everything set. The accelerants behind the paint cans in the garage. Timed ignition for 2:30 a.m. Untraceable. Just like the other jobs. Marcus's voice responded, clear and damning. "And Rebecca and the kid?" Phillips laughed. "Dead in their beds. Ruled accidental. $2 million payout. Clean and simple. Just like the Leong job." The Leong job. Rebecca's maiden name. Her father. The room spun. Claudia grabbed her hand, steadying her, while Marcus's voice continued to lay out his plan for murdering his own wife and child. Michael had captured it all, his camera recording in his lap, while he'd probably been lining up his toy cars or sorting his bottle caps, unaware that he was documenting a murder conspiracy. "This is everything," Claudia whispered, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. "This is confession to attempted murder and conspiracy. And the reference to your father, that's grounds to reopen his case." She was already copying the file to multiple drives, her lawyer's instincts taking over. But then she paused, her expression troubled. "There's one problem. The defense will argue about chain of custody, about Michael's ability to testify about when and where this was recorded. We need corroborating physical evidence. We need to find that accelerant before the fire investigation team does, and we need to prove it was placed there deliberately. Rebecca's mind raced. The house was still smoldering, a crime scene. If they could get in before the official investigation, if they could find what Phillips had left behind. Do you have connections in the police department? Someone who'd help us. Claudia was already reaching for her phone, a slight smile crossing her face. I know exactly who to call. Detective James Morrison met them at the burned mansion 90 minutes later. He was a black man in his early 50s, with kind eyes that had seen too much and a handshake that told Rebecca he was someone who could be trusted. He and Claudia clearly had history, the easy familiarity of old allies who'd fought battles together. Claudia says you've got evidence Marcus Chun tried to kill you and your boy, Morrison said as he signed them into the fire scene as consultants on his investigation. And evidence he might be connected to Kenneth Liang's death 5 years back. That's a hell of an accusation against one of Atlanta's richest men. I have his confession on tape, Rebecca replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Him and Leonard Phillips, planning our murders, referencing my father's death as the Liang job. All I need is for that recording to hold up in court. Claudia says we need physical evidence to support it. Morrison's expression darkened. Then let's find it. The mansion was a skeleton. The eastern wing, where Michael's room had been, was completely collapsed. Rebecca's throat tightened, thinking about her son sleeping there, surrounded by his carefully organized collections, his weighted blankets, his noise-canceling headphones. All of it ash now. All of it meant to be his funeral pyre, but the garage had partially survived, its concrete construction more resistant to the flames. Morrison led them through the destruction, his flashlight cutting through the smoky darkness. The smell of chemicals and burned materials was overwhelming. Michael walked close to Rebecca, his hand in hers, his eyes taking in everything with that intense focus that meant he was recording this scene in his mind just as thoroughly as his camera had recorded his father's confession. South corner, Rebecca said, remembering Phillips's words. Behind the paint cans. The paint cans were melted, deformed, but still identifiable on a metal shelf. And behind them, exactly as described, Morrison found it, a commercial-grade container of accelerant with a timer mechanism partially intact. The digital display was frozen at 2:31 a.m., 1 minute after the fire had started. Professional equipment, Morrison murmured, photographing it from every angle. This isn't some amateur job. This is someone who's done this before. He pointed his flashlight at the concrete floor, where residue patterns showed a deliberate trail leading from the accelerant to the main electrical panel. Arson pattern. Meant to look like an electrical fire but designed to spread fast and burn hot. Whoever did this wanted to make sure nobody got out. Claudia was documenting everything on her phone, her expression fierce. This proves premeditation. This proves it wasn't an accident. Combined with Michael's recording, we have them dead to rights on attempted murder and conspiracy. You said Kenneth Liang, Morrison said suddenly, straightening. I remember that case. Car accident, brake failure, mountain road up near Dahlonega. It was ruled accidental. Single vehicle, no witnesses. Why are we talking about it now? Claudia played him the recording, the section where Marcus casually referenced the Liang job, as if murdering his father-in-law was just another business transaction. Morrison listened 3 times, his expression growing grimmer with each replay. That's suggestive, but it's not proof. It won't be enough to charge him with Kenneth's murder. The case is 5 years cold. We'd need physical evidence linking Marcus or Phillips to that car, to the brake tampering. The case file, Morrison continued, thinking out loud. It's still in storage. We keep investigation files for 7 years on accidental deaths. Photos, mechanical reports, the examiner's notes. If there was evidence of tampering that wasn't properly identified at the time. He pulled out his phone. Give me 2 hours. I'll pull everything we have. They regrouped at Claudia's office while Morrison worked his magic in the evidence facility. Michael ate cereal at the conference table, arranging the pieces in precise patterns before eating them, finding comfort in routine despite the chaos surrounding him. Rebecca watched her son and marveled at the quirks of his neurology that had saved their lives. His need to document and record, his compulsive attention to detail, his inability to distinguish between important and unimportant information, all of it had combined to create the evidence that would destroy his father. Morrison called at noon. "I've got something." The original brake line inspection photos show scoring consistent with deliberate cutting, not normal wear. The examiner noted it in his report but didn't flag it as suspicious because there was no evidence of foul play, no apparent motive. Kenneth Leong was a respected businessman with no known enemies. Marcus Chun had an airtight alibi. He was at a construction site meeting in Marietta when the accident happened. 15 witnesses, including a county inspector. But, Claudia prompted, hearing the unspoken continuation. "But I pulled Leonard Phillips's phone records from that day. He wasn't at that meeting, and his phone pinged off a cell tower 15 miles from where Kenneth's car went off the road at exactly the right time. Phillips was there, Claudia. He cut those brake lines. Marcus was establishing his alibi while his partner committed murder." Rebecca felt something break and reform inside her chest. Her father's death wasn't an accident. She'd known it, felt it, but having confirmation was both validating and devastating. Marcus hadn't just tried to kill her and Michael. He'd already succeeded in murdering her father, had been living with her, sleeping beside her, raising her son, while carrying the blood of her family on his hands. "Can we prove it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "With the phone records, the brake line evidence, and the recording where Marcus references the Leong job?" "Yes," Morrison said firmly. "We can prove it. We can charge both of them with Kenneth's murder and with the attempted murder of you and Michael. But we need to move carefully. Marcus has powerful lawyers and friends in high places. We need an airtight case before we move." Claudia looked at Rebecca, then at Michael, who was methodically copying information from his toy camera manual into a notebook, his coping mechanism for stress. "We have one advantage," Claudia said slowly. "Marcus doesn't know we have the recording. He doesn't know Michael's camera was running. He thinks we're either dead or traumatized and scattered. We can use that. We can draw him out." "A sting operation," Morrison agreed. "Get him on record making statements that corroborate what we already have. Get Phillips to panic and say something incriminating. But it's risky. If Marcus suspects..." "He won't," Rebecca said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "Because I'm going to give him exactly what he expects. A grieving widow desperately seeking her husband's comfort. And he's going to walk right into the trap my autistic son built for him." The plan came together over the next 48 hours. Rebecca, using a burner phone Morrison provided, finally responded to Marcus's increasingly frantic messages. She told him what he wanted to hear, that she and Michael were safe, staying with a friend, traumatized but grateful to be alive. She didn't mention suspicions or accusations, just asked him to come home from his business trip to be with them. She suggested meeting at Piedmont Park, a public place where Michael would feel comfortable, neutral ground where Marcus would feel safe. Marcus agreed immediately, his text dripping with false concern and relief. Rebecca could read the calculation behind every word. He was wondering what she knew, what she suspected, whether his plan had truly failed or just been delayed. But his arrogance would be his downfall. Marcus Chun had gotten away with murder once before. He believed he was untouchable. The morning of the meeting, Rebecca dressed carefully. Not the designer clothes Marcus preferred, but simple jeans and a sweater, the kind of thing a traumatized woman might throw on. She looked at herself in the mirror of the hotel room Morrison had secured for them and barely recognized the reflection. 3 days ago, she'd been a Buckhead housewife, living in luxury, unaware that her husband was a serial killer. Now she was bait in a trap, fighting for justice for her father and for the life her son deserved. Michael sat on the hotel bed, his camera around his neck, a new recording device hidden in Rebecca's purse courtesy of the Atlanta PD. He understood what was happening more than people might expect. Autism didn't mean lack of intelligence or awareness. It meant processing differently, communicating differently, but Michael knew his father had tried to hurt them. He knew what they were about to do was important. "Mama, will Daddy go to jail?" he asked, his voice serious. "Yes, sweetheart. Daddy did very bad things. He hurt people. He tried to hurt us. So yes, he's going to jail for a very long time." Michael nodded slowly, processing. "Good. Daddy shouldn't hurt people. Grandpa wouldn't want him to hurt people. His 8-year-old logic was pure and clear. Right and wrong weren't complicated to Michael. His father had committed murder, therefore his father should face consequences. Simple moral arithmetic. Piedmont Park was beautiful in the late November morning, joggers and families enjoying the crisp air. Undercover officers surrounded the area, Morrison among them in running clothes with a radio hidden under his jacket. Claudia waited in a van a block away, ready to coordinate the arrest. Rebecca and Michael walked slowly toward the designated meeting spot near the Oak Hill section, a relatively secluded area with enough tree cover to feel private but still within sight of Morrison's team. Marcus was already there, leaning against a park bench, looking every inch the concerned husband in expensive casual wear. When he saw them, his face transformed into an expression of relief, so convincing that Rebecca almost doubted what she knew. Almost. Rebecca! Oh, thank God! He rushed forward, arms open to embrace her. She let him, feeling his expensive cologne, the familiar strength of his arms, all of it tainted now with the knowledge of what those hands had done. Michael stood apart, clutching his camera, not making eye contact with his father. Marcus barely glanced at him. He never had paid much attention to Michael. "I've been so worried," Marcus said, pulling back to look at her face. "The house, the fire, I couldn't reach you. I flew back as soon as I could. What happened? Were you there when it started?" The lies came so easily to him. Rebecca's mic was recording every word. "We left before it happened. You told me to leave early, remember? For the flight." A flicker of something crossed Marcus's face. Calculation. "Right, yes, the flight. But you never made it to the airport. I waited for hours. Where did you go?" "I came back," Rebecca said simply. "Something felt wrong. So I drove back toward the house. And I saw it burning. I saw the fire trucks. And I realized." She let her voice break, watched Marcus's expression shift to concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I realized that if we'd stayed, if we'd been inside, you'd be dead," Marcus finished, and there was something in his tone that made Rebecca's skin crawl. Not horror at the close call, but disappointment that his plan had failed. "Thank God you trusted your instincts. Did the investigators say what caused it?" "They're still investigating." "But Marcus!" Rebecca stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Michael told me something strange. He said Leonard Phillips was at the house that night, before we left." "Was he?" Marcus's face went carefully blank. "Phillips? No, I don't think so." Michael must have been confused. You know how he gets confused sometimes. "My camera heard Mr. Phillips and Daddy talking," Michael said suddenly, his voice clear and firm. He held up the device, its red light blinking. "In the garage. About fire. About Grandpa. My camera knows everything." The world seemed to freeze. Marcus stared at the toy camera, his expression cycling through disbelief, understanding, and then cold fury in the space of seconds. He looked at Rebecca, really looked at her, and saw the trap closing around him. "That's a toy," he said slowly. "It doesn't record anything meaningful. It recorded 18 minutes of you and Phillips planning to murder me and Michael," Rebecca said, her voice steady now, all pretense dropped. "It recorded you referencing my father's death as the Leon job. It recorded everything, Marcus. And the police found the accelerant in the garage, exactly where Phillips said he'd left it. It's over." Marcus's hand shot out, grabbing for Michael's camera, but Morrison was already moving. "Marcus Chen, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Rebecca Chen and Michael Chen, for conspiracy to commit murder, for the murder of Kenneth Leong, and for insurance fraud." Other officers materialized from the trees, surrounding them. Marcus tried to run, but Morrison had him on the ground in seconds, cuffing his hands behind his back. "You have nothing!" Marcus snarled, his composure completely shattered. "That recording is inadmissible. An autistic kid's toy, handled without proper chain of custody, you'll never get it past my lawyers. We have the recording, we have the physical evidence of the accelerant, we have your partner's phone records placing him at the scene of Kenneth Liang's death, and we have the brake line evidence from Kenneth's car," Morrison said calmly, reading Marcus's rights. "We have enough to bury you twice over. Leonard Phillips is being arrested as we speak, and I'm betting he's going to flip on you to save himself. You're done, Chun." They arrested Leonard Phillips at his office building an hour later. Morrison's prediction was correct. Phillips immediately asked for a deal, confirming everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. Marcus Chun, Atlanta's respected millionaire developer, was revealed to be a serial arsonist and double murderer. The news exploded across Georgia and beyond. The recording from Michael's camera became the centerpiece of the prosecution's case, a child's innocent documentation of evil. The trial took 8 months. Marcus's expensive lawyers tried everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Marcus Chun was sentenced to life without possibility of parole for Kenneth Liang's murder, with additional consecutive sentences for attempted murder and arson. Leonard Phillips received 25 years for his role in both crimes. But the real story, the one that mattered, wasn't about Marcus's punishment. It was about Michael's transformation. The trial had been hard on him, the disruption to routine, the crowds, the attention. But Claudia and Rebecca had protected him fiercely, and the prosecutor had been gentle when Michael testified, understanding his needs, allowing him to communicate in the way that worked for him. And something remarkable happened. Michael, who had struggled with confidence, who had been labeled and dismissed and underestimated, discovered that he was a hero. His camera, his obsessive documentation, his different way of processing the world had saved lives. Teachers at his new school treated him with respect. Therapists helped him understand that his autism wasn't a weakness, but a different kind of strength. He began to flourish, slowly but unmistakably. A year after Marcus's conviction, Rebecca sat in Piedmont Park again, watching Michael play with other children. It didn't come naturally to him, the social dance of childhood friendship, but he was trying, and that was everything. His toy camera hung around his neck, still recording, still documenting his world. But now he used it to capture happy moments, birthday parties, trips to the aquarium, his mother's smile. Rebecca had sold what remained of the Buckhead mansion and moved to a modest home in Virginia Highland, close to Claudia's office, close to the community that had embraced them. Her father's construction company had been restructured and donated to a non-profit that built affordable housing. Blood money transformed into something good. "Ms. Rebecca," a young mother approached, her own son watching Michael with curious eyes. "I wanted to thank you. My son is autistic too, and hearing Michael's story, how he saved you, it gave me hope. It helped me see my son's differences as gifts, not just challenges." Rebecca smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "Michael taught me that too. Every day he teaches me that." She watched her son, 8 years old, and carrying the weight of having exposed his father's evil, but also carrying the knowledge that he was strong, capable, important. Not despite his autism, but because his autistic brain worked exactly the way it was supposed to work. The moral of this story isn't complicated. It's this: what the world calls weakness can be strength in disguise. Michael's need to document and record, dismissed as an odd quirk of autism, became the tool that brought a killer to justice. His inability to lie or dissemble meant he reported exactly what he saw and heard with perfect accuracy. His attention to patterns that others missed revealed the truth that had been hidden for years. Rebecca's father had been right to worry. Claudia had been right to investigate. And Michael, in his innocent, neurodivergent way, had been the hero they needed. Marcus Chun had believed his wealth and power made him untouchable. He believed his family was disposable, obstacles to be eliminated for insurance money. He'd underestimated his wife's strength and his son's unique capabilities. That underestimation cost him everything. Justice isn't always swift, but when it comes, it's thorough. And sometimes it arrives carried in the hands of an 8-year-old boy with a toy camera who saw the world differently, and in doing so, saw the truth that everyone else had missed. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you learned in the comments below.